Hello friends and welcome back to my channel where we mainly discuss thrillers on Thursdays, and since the Sharp Objects finale was on Sunday and since you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know I'm a Gillian Flynn super fan. I'm sure you could have guessed that this was the video that I was going to be posting this week. 99.9% of the time my videos do not have spoilers, but today's video is going to be just spoiler filled just because you guys have had a few days since the finale came out. I'm hoping you've seen it all by now, and I'm gonna have a couple shameless plugs right now, but I generally don't do this, so hopefully you guys can forgive me. But I had previously, until a couple weeks ago, never been on any kind of podcast, but I actually have two that I'm going to be a guest on, and one is related to Sharp Objects, so I thought I would share. But I'm going to be on the Snark Squad podcast, and that's coming out on September 5th, and it's going to be like an hour long, just really getting into the nitty-gritty of Sharp Objects and what we thought about the whole series. So obviously this video is just going to be, what, probably 10 minutes, so if you want to talk a lot more about Sharp Objects, I will have that linked below. And then on, I think it's September 11th, I'm going to be on the Books in the Freezer podcast talking about underrated horror novels. So both those podcasts are just wonderful. So if you're looking for two new ones to check out, I will of course have those linked down below. So let's get straight into Sharp Objects, and I'm not going to do a summary pros and cons like I normally do just because this video is just going to be stream of consciousness. But I will say first, I thought at first when I saw they were going to make this a mini series, I thought, how are they going to do that? Because the book was what, around 200 pages. I was just shocked that they thought they could get 8 hours worth of material out of this book, but I was so pleasantly surprised. And I'm just gonna say up front, and even though I'm a big Gillian Flynn fan, I'm still gonna say this, I really think the miniseries was just as good as the book. If not, I think I might have enjoyed it even slightly more just because I loved all of the material that was added that wasn't in the book. I think the fact that it was stretched over 8 hours really worked because there's something about that atmosphere in the town, in the house, that just felt claustrophobic and unsettling, but also just kind of lazy. And I mean that in a good way. There's something just very like bucolic and lazy about that small town where it just like you can feel the heat and like you're stuck in place and slightly back in time. And I think that worked so well with the tone of the show and how it kind of went at a little bit of a slower pace than the book. I also loved how it vacillated from being a little bit more on the slow pace side to suddenly feeling as if I was watching a straight up horror novel. I mean, that image when Camille and Amma are spinning after they've done, what was it, ecstasy, and suddenly you see the face of the murdered girl and the face of her sister appear on Amma's face. I was horrified and so shocked. And I feel like a strength of Gillian Flynn's books is that sometimes things are like that where they're just outright disturbing, but there are other instances where she's really good at making you feel unsettled when you don't know if you should be. So I don't know if maybe I was the only one who thought this was really creepy, but the scene, I forget the name of the little boy, and she goes to talk to that young boy who claimed he saw the lady in white, and even just the image of his mom walking from the darkness towards the door holding her IV was so unsettling. And I kind of get the impression they intentionally made her look almost ghost-like, but so much of the show, including, you know, flashes of Camille's dead sister just randomly appearing when the doors would shift and you'd see her in the mirror, was so unsettling and also not too in your face. And again, this is stream of consciousness. I should probably put this at the end, but I will say, did any of you see Gillian's tweet where she said more soon? What do you mean more? Because I've heard at least that Sharp Objects is definitely not going to have a sequel. It's not going to be like Big Little Lies, at least from what I've heard, where because Big Little Lies did so well, they're going to make a part 2. From what I've heard, Sharp Objects is done, at least in series format, so maybe she's just talking about a new book coming out, which I have a video about, or maybe it means her second book is going to be a sequel to Sharp Objects. I don't know, but please let me know your thoughts. Now we're gonna get into talking about the characters, and I'm just gonna talk about them randomly as they pop into my head. So in terms of Dick, I thought that Dick, I'm worried my video is gonna get demonetized just for saying his name repeatedly, but I thought that Dick lived up to his name much more in the book. In the book, of course, if you've read it, you know that he ghosts Camille and never speaks to her again after he sees all of her scars. And so I really appreciated the fact that the TV show, no, it's not like they get together at the end and it's this unrealistic happy ending, but I liked that they gave us just that like 2-minute conversation of wrapping it up and him at least saying that he was sorry just for her life in general. I also just really wanted to get him a different shirt because he was sweating so much. Now I want to talk a little bit about Alan, because Alan, I feel like a lot of us were rooting for throughout the first few episodes. Him in his little cardigan, him like laying there jacking off to like 1950s Playboys, what were they? And they showed us a really good job of kind of making us feel for him, but then obviously by the end you see what a dick he is, and you get the impression that even if he didn't necessarily know what Adora was doing, that he definitely had some sense and maybe was lying to himself. But I loved the evolution of his character, and the director is like, no, you really should not have that much sympathy for this guy. One character who I thought was so improved from the book was Jackie. Granted, I read the book a long time ago, like at least 6 years ago, I want to say, because I think I read it when I first started my channel, but I thought she had so much more of a fun presence in the show. Loved her painting of herself. And it was also, of course, wonderful to hear that, you know, she did have this sense of what was happening and at least tried to stop Adora, or at least figure out what happened by doing some research and asking the hospital. Of course, we've got to talk about Camille, and I was very impressed by her kind of quiet power, and I thought she did a very good job of being vulnerable and terrified, but equally strong. I also want to know how she had perfect waves throughout the entire show, when clearly she wasn't even necessarily the type to shower in the show. That was a little unrealistic, but overall Amy Adams did just a phenomenal job. I feel like her, Adora, and Amma are for sure gonna get Emmy nominations, if not win. Amma, I thought that she was horrifying in the best possible way. I sat there in dead silence when the credits rolled and we saw the scene of her and her friends killing the girls, and that last shot of her face when she's choking, pulling someone's teeth out, whatever it is that she's doing. I am sure this is not the last we are gonna see of her. She was brilliant, and I thought that she and the director did a very good job of making us first hate her, then feel for her and be so happy that she had this wonderful life at the end, until of course we see the teeth. My one minor gripe in terms of casting is John Keane. I do think that the actor who played him did an excellent job, and I'm not saying that I didn't like his character in the show, but I had always pictured him as sort of a Jared Leto type, because in the book he's really described as this ethereal kind of whimsical beauty, whereas in the show he just looks kind of like a bro. But again, that's a very minor gripe. And one thing that I really appreciated about the show was it doesn't handhold the audience. It doesn't outright spell everything out. There are things that me as a book reader, I'd read the book, I knew that Amma was the killer, I knew that Adora had Munchausen's by proxy, but I still felt like I was learning new things and even missing things at some point. Someone I saw on a thread was saying that at the end scene when they're all at the dinner table, the girl, when she's talking to Camille looks down when she's eating, what's the girl's name, May, I think? And someone was saying that there was something written there, but then it changes. And I definitely noticed that there was text, but it went away before I fully registered and read it. And one thing I noticed that a lot of my coworkers were complaining about, and I'm curious about your guys' take on this, but a lot of my coworkers who had not read the book, we were all discussing it the next day, and a lot of them were upset that Amma was suddenly revealed to be the killer at the end, because they felt it was really shoehorned in with just no context. And they were like, oh, they just threw that in to just have a twist. And I could see how they say that, because in the book there is more detail around why Amma was the killer and why she painted their nails and why she shaved their legs and all of those things. And I'm curious your guys' thoughts about them kind of leaving that out a little bit. On the one hand, I like it because, again, the director is treating their audience with respect and thinking, okay, maybe they're picking up on these clues and these little pieces of dialogue throughout the show that do sort of explain why she's the killer, and it does match up to the rest of the show. But at the same time, I don't think you would necessarily have that context if you hadn't read the book. And so I could see why they might feel like, oh, that was just thrown in for the sake of having a twist. But overall, I'm sure you guys can guess my rating for the show. It is 5 out of 5 creepy branches. So please let me know, what did you guys think about Sharp Objects? And again, I will have the links to the 2 podcasts I'm going to be guests on down below. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I'm currently reading Midnight at the Bright Ideas bookstore, so I'll have my review of that up soon. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and I'll see you all next Thursday. Bye.